Right now, it is time for Jim Lynch and Cover Your Assets. Jim is an independent voice on Wall Street, the economy, sports, and politics. Brings well over 40 years of experience to those topics and more. And we say good morning to Jim this morning. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning to you and everybody out there.
Well, today is the dawning of a new day, and it's a new day that includes the following headline. COVID death toll has now surpassed the 1918 flu death toll. So that is just something to think about. Put that little feather in your cap today.
Well, some things are more simple than other things. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. Or, if you don't get vaccinated, then prepare your will and put aside money for your funeral and all of those things that are not very pleasant to deal with. This has become a very, very easy subject to deal with. Getting people to execute it seems to grow in frustration. And I do accept misinformation being put out there by the likes of that idiot, Tucker Carlson, though he probably makes $40 million a year by being an idiot, which is one of the problems with our overall society. A lot of people will do anything for money. But that said, you know, we really have to understand in trying to address this that our people, I hate to say this, but I must, are a lot dumber than we think they are. There is a piece, an article from NBC News that shows that nine counties in the last election in 2020, 9 counties voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, 26% on average, some as high as 40, 50%. They're located in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and a few other states. Well, don't you know, these 9 counties, they said, we want to reinvestigate the voting. We want to know what happened. We want to know that it's perfect. Now, mind you, these counties voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, which means, obviously, the counties consist primarily of Donald Trump supporters. So how stupid can you be that you want a recount? One, as a taxpayer, you've got to know that's going to cost the county money. And two, what in the name of goodness could you prove by having a recount? So I take that and I go back to the vaccine and I say, okay, somebody is worried, somebody is this, somebody is that. Vaccines have been around for a long time. They've been very successful. The United States of America has been the premier country in medicine and developing vaccines and so forth. So it's somewhat incomprehensible that our people are in denial. I can only say this is a lot of stupidity. And frankly, when I read the article, I said, my God, there's little wonder that people are concerned about maintaining our democracy when these people are so stupid they can't think. Now, this goes back to the days of Ronald Reagan and the Republicans when they decided they were going to cut back on school funding. He and that Republican administration was not the only one doing that. And they figured, well, okay, we're going to cut back on this, and we're going to give people a tax break. This is Reagan's age, okay? And then they also decided to tax Social Security. Now, this has never been tested in the courts, but it should be illegal.
He said that it couldn't be done.
You contribute your money after tax. You contribute your money after tax to Social Security. Why? should it be taxed again? But long and short, the pandemic goes on, the stupidity goes on. People like DeSantis in Florida is proposing people do a more costly approach rather than vaccine to take care of their going forward. But see, this doesn't make sense. It's like throwing a bunch of balls in a box and see which one comes out first. It's gross stupidity. Yet the people in Florida apparently, generally, just are accepting the fact that they might be on an incubator anytime soon because their governor says, oh, you don't need the vaccine.
The vaccine and vaccination is just one part of a myriad of things going on that are worldwide. And this story I want to ask you about, and that is the story that came out of Hong Kong yesterday, where Bitcoin once again is suffering losses anywhere from 5.7 to 12% in the past 24 hours. Also, other cryptocurrencies, Ethereum and more, are also tumbling with their prices, and this is all related to what's going on in China, and that is a Chinese company which is in big problems, and that's Evergrande. And you brought this up in a little email to me, Jim. I mean, this is a pretty big indicator coming out of China about some worldwide problems.
Yes, it is. This is the second largest real estate company in China, and like many other crises, it's been created by the company going out and borrowing all kinds of money to reinvest in real estate. Now, this is one of the products when interest rates generally are as low as they are throughout the world. People feel, well, God, the cost of money is so cheap. Why don't I just take this and look, I can get that and maybe the potential. And that is what has happened. They have burdened themselves with a tremendous amount of debt. And in terms of them defaulting, it could be a $300 billion default. Now, on the one hand, people say, well, the Chinese government will probably bail them out in some way or another. I would say I wouldn't bet on that. I wouldn't bet on that because during the last year, the Chinese government has been coming down hard on two things. One, industries that are becoming very, very dominant in the Chinese economy, namely technology and others like real estate. And also, they've been coming down on these celebrity types who are out there showing their wealth and so forth. Now, why do they have a problem with that? Well, they're not a capitalistic society. They are a communist-driven society. And the Chinese feel that they're losing control, so to speak, of the people by allowing them to have this outlandish power. There was a young woman, Chinese woman, who basically is very talented, show business type, and then started investing and made a lot of money and was out front there in China and the world, but primarily China, as this wonderful person. Well, a month and a half ago, she didn't exist anymore on the internet, or you don't see her in public. And what happened? The Chinese government clamped down. Wrong way around, I think the Chinese just might make an example of this company, and somehow they'll long-term help out smaller investors, but they're going to let a lot of people lose a lot of money when this thing is settled. Also, the Chinese are now talking about a capital gains tax, which was outlawed in 20 years ago. And why are they doing that? Because a lot of Chinese folks are going out into the stock market and buying a lot of these, what they call M-E-M-E stocks, which are high-flying, which move up without any sense, but you can make a lot of money if your timing is good. The net result is a lot of people, average people, are making a fair amount of money and are not paying taxes to the government. Now, the Chinese are the second largest economy in the world, but they need monies to fuel whatever they're doing. And right now they're in a process of doing a major input on cleaning up the pollution, creating more infrastructure for water and so forth. So they're going and grabbing taxes where they can. Long and short of it, as we said on the show a fair amount of times in the last 6 months or something, take your profits, take some profits, take some of it off the table. September, October period can be very difficult on the calendar for the stock market. But more importantly, you've had a run from about 18,000 Dow Jones, the low, to 35,000 Dow Jones. That's almost a double. Please look yourself in the mirror. Get a financial advisor. Be practical. You bought these things to make money. You've made money. Don't be greedy. Don't be greedy. Pigs are the ones who lose money in the stock market.
Well, the stock market is always is the problem with the stock market.
Marshall?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here, Jim. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. My thing is going in and out. I'm sorry.
All right. The problem with the stock market nowadays is with the power of social media and not just regular reporting at the stock market. Once again, you have a lot of people who think they're experts into it, a lot of people who read stock market reports and think that they can report on it, and basically the stock market, all it really does is move the needle for a very small percentage of what the American economy actually is, and you know, we're not out of this yet, Jim. There's a story that came yesterday. The founder of Carvana, who by the way has an arrest record for fraud. Anyway, a lot of people are saying that what Carvana does is going back to what happened in our first housing crisis, which is they not only sell cars and used cars and nearly new cars, but they also finance them. And they find out that Carvana is far more aggressive in markets where low-income people live because they'll give them loans on the cars, which was happening basically with housing before we had that huge housing crisis and a hit on our economy. We just haven't learned in this country that there's certain things that when they go wrong, they're going to go terribly wrong. And once again, what's going on with the sale of cars and interest rates and the ability for people to purchase basically any car they want at any price they want is going to, sooner or later, one of those things that's going to come home to roost.
There's no question about it. And you're pointing it out in reference to the housing crisis in the 06-08 period is very, very timely vis-a-vis this supposed car company. It's the same theory. I had a woman friend who she and her husband were professional people, and the kids were growing, so she, she wanted to go and do something. And she hooked up with this company, I guess it was a bank or an S&L, and they said, okay, well, they wanted her to go and tell people who couldn't afford it that we'll lend you the money and you can afford it. Well, she lasted a month and she couldn't handle it. The point is they're doing the same thing with cars. What we must understand is it's a cycle. When the people who borrow the money to buy the car, when they default, after a certain time, the car goes back to the company. The company writes off the difference between what they sold it at and what it is now, getting a tax break, and then they simply go into the used car market and resell the car. Bottom line is they take X amount of money out of a poor person's pocket and in the process create a revenue stream for themselves. One, you have to be aware of it. You can't engage in borrowing money at exceedingly low rates when you don't know what you're doing with it. If you're just doing it for the pleasure of buying something that you can't afford, that's absolutely verboten. Let me get back now to Bitcoin, which you mentioned. It took a hit, and it took a hit for a number of reasons. People are getting squirrely on the fact that the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is looking much closer at Bitcoin in terms of should this be regulated, how should it be regulated, should there be margin on what people buy, who are dominating the market, who are influencing the market. There's a thing called a burn. Periodically, I forget if it's monthly or quarterly, people who have a lot of Bitcoin, they'll burn them. They'll put them out of existence so that there isn't a supply of them or the supply is lessened. That means that there's an automatic positive with less supply. Now, I'd call that rigging the market. I haven't heard that before about this, but there's something awfully strange about this. More importantly, the SEC is looking very closely at this. And additionally, if you look at Bitcoin, when you buy Bitcoin, you buy it in, if you're a U.S. citizen, dollars. Fine. When you go to sell Bitcoin, you're going to be selling it in dollars. Fine. What happens if the dollar goes down 20%? What do you think happens to your Bitcoin? It's overly simplistic, but very realistic.
Well, it's one of those things that we look at, and there's so many people. Bitcoin reminds me a lot of, there was a time in the 70s where pyramid trading was at its high, where people would get in early and basically rob money from other people, and other people would line up to try to do the same thing. Is Bitcoin basically like that, or is Bitcoin something that is actually going to survive?
That it's going to survive?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to survive. It's just, you saw it go down 8 to 10% here because it's a risk asset. The market itself is telling you it's a risk asset. So if you have a debacle in the markets where risk assets are taken off, people sell, believe me, Bitcoin will lead the parade. It doesn't pay a dividend. You don't know who the people are who are manipulating it, and people are manipulating it. They're using it to launder money. They're using it for a lot of different things. So, you know, it's a scheme.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's hard not to look at it right now and say it's a scheme that the people that got in early and that got huge returns are going to do so at the cost of other people. One final thing before we wrap things up. Once again, to show you how worldwide our political system is kind of tied up. In Canada, the snap election proved nothing. Justin Trudeau's snap election did not get him the necessary 170 seats. Now he will be able to form a government because they won about 160 seats. But still, once again, political situations across the whole world, Jim, including ours, are in a very bad place.
They are. And we could write books about how this has been occurring. I think, in a word, this goes back to the 50s, when I recall someone who was very knowledgeable saying, we really must be concerned, this is in the 50s now, the development of consumer consumption and consumerism. And this has occurred in this country on a tremendous scale. A lot of people made money. A lot of people have not made money. And the net result is there's a pent-up desire on the people of average income to do better. And in the process, they have grievances that they're not doing better. And these things are then channeled by people like Donald Trump into the beliefs that as an autocrat, he can make it better, so listen to him. He or they, because it's worldwide, create this whole idea of there's something wrong with the system. Now, obviously, there is something wrong with systems throughout the world when they basically are dictatorships and so forth. But there are a number of democracies which basically, overall, are for the good of the people generally and do try the best they can to improve the equality of people throughout the land. Now, in our country, this problem has been exacerbated by Citizens United, where millionaires and billionaires basically can buy politicians who then give the boot to the little guy and give favors to the big guy. And that's part and parcel of what we're seeing here. Now, the grievances are much greater than just money inequality. It's education inequality. It's people being shown all these hot shots that are making a lot of money. And it just builds on itself. And it really comes down to education, and it comes down to better government. And right now we're in the throes of trying to save our democracy. I hope to God we do. I wish Biden was a little bit more specific in his planning and actions rather than, as I said a couple of weeks ago, he is spreading himself too thin. You don't run all over the place when you were planning to get out of Afghanistan. And you don't run all over the place when you're trying to do the pandemic. You don't say things ahead of the FDA and the CDC, which then gets changed 2 weeks later. So in our country, we need more concentration and focus on our problems. And I think that Biden is great in trying to include people in, but people didn't elect him to be included in on all these things day by day. They elected him to solve things. And he's got a big challenge here with the French. The French are our longest running ally. They helped us to get out from under the kingdom of Britain. And then we helped them in their French Revolution. And with a misstep on a diplomatic basis, Biden is blowing this relationship up. He couldn't make a phone call and say, hey, look, we're dealing with the Aussies, and we might do a deal with them. The other thing is he can now correct it by bringing the French into that deal and giving them a piece of the pie. But if we expect people to be our allies worldwide and to be trusted and so forth, we got to shape up.
Well, that's a great place to leave it. It's absolutely true. We got to improve our game. Jim, we'll speak to you again next week.
Pleasure. Talk to you then.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Jim Lynch and Cover Your Assets here on The Breakfast Club. All the opinions expressed on Cover Your Assets are those of the people that give them. And they don't necessarily represent Tri-State Public Communications, WHDD, Robin Hood Radio, RobinHoodRadio.com, the Robin Hood Radio Network, or CATV6, or the Bargain Barn.